Hi, today we're going to talk about why it is important to give feedback on a regular basis and how we can deliver feedback in an easy and structured way. My name is Elisa and I'm the KLG Training and Development Manager, and I'll be presenting this module on the important topic of how to give feedback. Getting feedback right has a very direct impact on how people perform in their jobs, so it's worth spending time thinking about it, practicing it, and improving it. Today's session is going to cover the following 3 points: what feedback is and does it really matter, how to deliver clear and constructive feedback using a feedback module, and how employees see feedback. But first, take a few moments to think about this. What's your intention when giving feedback? Or expressed in another way, what do you want your feedback to make happen? The Britannica Dictionary defines feedback as helpful information that is given to someone to say what can be done to improve performance, a product, or behavior. So the critical words here are helpful and improve. Take a few moments to repeat these words and keep them in mind throughout this presentation. Adam is an acclaimed speaker on the topic of workplace motivation. These are the 19 magic words that he says will change the way people react to feedback. They made people more open to receiving feedback and implementing suggested changes. Perhaps these words are so effective because of something called growth mindset. The term was devised by a psychologist in America who was interested in the way people's beliefs about learning and their capacity to change affects their approach to work and life. Take a few moments to read the descriptions of growth mindset and its opposite, fixed mindset. What type of mindset do you have? Now, let's move on to our next topic. What do employees think of feedback? Recent statistics from the Exploding Topics, a research business who provides statistical trends to companies, reported that 96% of employees believe that feedback is a positive thing, regardless if it's constructive or positive. And 65% of employees also wish to receive more feedback on a regular basis, and studies show that businesses that conducted regular feedbacks experienced 15% lower turnover rates. We can also see from these statistics that 92% of employees appreciate constructive feedback because they feel that it helps them improve their performance. Unfortunately, 32% of employees say that they have to wait 3 months or more to receive feedback from their managers. So it's clear that employees appreciate regular feedback, regardless if it's positive or constructive, and it can lead to an improvement in performance. Now I want you to take a moment to think about how often you give feedback to your team members. Is it daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly? Or does it depend? What does it depend on? Take a moment to think about the factors which influence how often you give feedback. What's in your list? Experience level, length of time doing this job, new challenges or projects within a role, personality, communication preferences. When it comes to deciding how much, there's a sweet spot, and you will need to use your judgment and make adjustment as needed. Around 72% of employees do not receive meaningful feedback from their managers on a weekly basis. So unless you are in the 28%, you may be one of these managers who is either not giving enough feedback or the feedback you're given is not meaningful. And by meaningful, we mean feedback which resonates, is actionable and helpful. I'm confident that we can do better than these numbers, so let's start improving from today. Back in 2004, a couple of researchers at the US University concluded that giving 5 positive comments for every 1 negative comment optimized performance. Although it's hard to prove this scientifically, it makes a useful point that if we feel recognized for what we're doing right, we're more receptive to hearing about where we can improve. Enough about stats. Let's explore how we can deliver the feedback in an easy and structured way. It's worth considering the type of feedback that you are giving before you plunge in. Is this positive feedback or constructive improvement feedback that you're giving? Is it a good time to deliver the feedback now, or should I wait a little bit? Is it a hard or soft skill behavior that I want to give feedback on? The answer will help you to decide when, where, and how you will approach the conversation. We won't spend too long focusing on positive feedback because let's face it, most of us find it quite easy. But it's worth spending a few moments talking about it because believe it or not, there's even a better way to give praise. Using the simple but effective SBI module, you focus on the specific behavior that you have observed and describe the positive impact or outcome that has resulted from it. Positive feedback does not always need to be oral. Sometimes a simple Teams message, an email, or even a post-it note is enough. Using emojis and GIFs can be a fun and informal way to get your message across. Here's an example of a praising message you might send to an employee. Notice that it's not just a great job, but highlights what the staff member did well and the positive impact of the action. And now to the harder part. How do we deliver feedback to an employee who needs to improve something? We're going to call this improvement feedback, since it focuses on improvement. Let's take a moment to go back to our questions. If it is improvement feedback, then what's the best time to deliver it? Is it urgent or can it wait until your next one-to-one? Is it about a hard skill or something more behavioral and therefore likely to be more sensitive? If it's a behavioral issue, then it may also be more subjective, so based on an opinion. And it's always going to be a harder conversation to navigate. Setting up conditions for a successful and productive conversation is important, so think about where and when to talk. Find somewhere quiet with some privacy to focus on the conversation, and allow sufficient time. Presenting issues doesn't have to take a long time, but it's important to listen with empathy. Try to keep some time free before to prepare and after for reflection and follow-up. One of the biggest concerns we hear is about how to structure the conversation. COIN is a helpful acronym for guiding you through 4 essential elements to ensure the conversation is clear and helpful. To give clear feedback, context is important. Be specific about the event or situation that you want to discuss. Avoid being vague, as this can often lead to misunderstandings or confusion. The next step is observation. Explain what you have observed directly. If you're repeating something that you've heard, make it clear that you're reporting what you've heard rather than stating it as a fact. For example, I understand that you're not able to meet Claire until the end of the month. Is that right? Once you've asked a question, stop speaking and give the individual space and time to respond. Be curious about what they have to say. Explore what has happened and avoid making assumptions. Leave yourself open to hearing their perspective on events. Focus on what's being said and not on what you will respond. When you provided examples about the behavior or issue, explain the impact. Impact might be expressed in terms of how others are feeling, whether a deadline has been achieved, or the quality of service that has been provided. And finally, talk about the next steps. Agree on the changes that need to be made, what you expect moving forward, and identify the specific actions that need to happen. To go back to earlier example, the employee's actions might be moving some meetings around so that they can meet Claire this week and she can finalize her numbers. Your action might be to talk to another manager and explain that their deadline needs to move. Ensuring that you both have next steps to take will send the message that improvement is a collaborative process which you as a manager will actively support. Let's look at an example on how to use this module when giving improvement feedback. Take a few moments to read through the text. And now notice how the response fits into the 4 sections of COIN. You also need to think about your opening lines for the conversation. You can use lines like, I've noticed that do you have a few minutes to talk? Or I have something I'd like to discuss with you. Everyone has their own communication style. Some of us are more direct and get to the point quicker. Others express themselves in a softer way. Using the informative approach will be appropriate for certain situations, for example, where the issue appears straightforward. In this example, the inquiry form not loading may be a familiar issue with a straightforward solution. In this example, the manager is using a collaborative approach. There is an issue. Perhaps it's the first time it has happened. Let's work on it together. Before we finish this session, let's review one last thing. Here are a few phrases that you can use when giving feedback to help the person grow. We've finally reached the end of this module, and we'll go through a quick summary before saying goodbye for this time. We talked about the definition of feedback and how a growth mindset is important in order to use feedback. We looked at how important feedback is to keep employees engaged and motivated at work, and then we went on to consider different ways to deliver feedback and important considerations when conducting feedback conversations. We've reached the end of this training module, and as always, I want to thank you for taking the time to learn more about this important topic. And if you wish to read more about the COIN model mentioned in this training, you can click on the links on this PowerPoint. You can also read about the SBI module and tips and tools to use in an effective way.